Have you ever wondered why some men get instant respect while others are ignored the moment they walk into a room? It's not about money, looks, or status. It's something deeper, something women can sense without a word being spoken. And the truth is hard to swallow. They can tell when you're weak. Not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually. And if they feel it, they pull away. Not always on purpose. It's instinct. It's protection. And unless you face this now, the pattern will repeat again and again. Rejection, disconnection, and doubt eating away at your confidence. You might think you're doing okay. You're kind. You're respectful. You work hard. But under the surface, something's missing. You avoid confrontation. You seek approval. You say yes when you want to say no. And every time you do, you give away a piece of your strength. Quietly, slowly, until one day you look in the mirror and don't recognize the man staring back. He looks tired, hesitant, lost. This is the silent cost of weakness, and most men never see it coming. Women don't want weakness, not because they're cruel, but because they crave strength, not dominance, not control, but presence, a man who knows who he is, a man who doesn't need to prove anything because he lives with purpose, a man who stands up, not just for her, but for himself. That's the energy that attracts, that protects, that inspires. And when a woman senses it, she opens. But when she feels the opposite, when she senses fear, neediness, hesitation, she closes. Even if she likes you, even if she wants to stay. You don't need to become someone else. You need to become who you were meant to be before the world told you to play small. This video is your turning point. The moment you stop pretending that everything's fine. The moment you stop blaming bad luck, bad timing, or bad women, and start owning the truth. Because once you understand the signs women see as weakness, you'll never be the same again. You'll walk differently, speak differently, think differently. You'll become the kind of man others admire and women trust, not because you're trying, but because you're real. That's what's waiting for you if you keep watching. 7 signs, 7 patterns that silently destroy your power, and more importantly, how to fix each one with confidence, clarity, and courage. No fluff, no hype, just truth that transforms. And by the end, you won't just understand what's holding you back, you'll feel it. And more than that, you'll feel ready to change it. So stay with this, because the man you want to be is already inside you. He's just buried under years of fear, doubt, and lies. It's time to uncover him, one step at a time. Starting now, not tomorrow, not someday, now. Because once you see the signs, you can never unsee them. And that's exactly how your breakthrough begins. You think avoiding conflict makes you peaceful. But what it really makes you is invisible. When you stay silent to keep things smooth, when you nod along just to avoid friction, you don't earn respect, you lose it. Women feel it. They see it in your hesitation, your nervous smile, your unwillingness to draw a line. And in that moment, you're no longer a man she can trust. You're just someone afraid of tension, afraid to be disliked, afraid to lead. But strength isn't about being loud. It's about being grounded, firm, clear. And if you can't show that when it matters most, she knows. She feels it in her gut. This man won't protect the space. This man won't protect himself. So how could he protect me? You weren't born afraid. Somewhere along the way, you learned that standing up for yourself made people uncomfortable. Maybe you were punished for speaking your mind. Maybe rejection taught you to stay small. But what once protected you now limits you. Because every time you swallow your voice, you reinforce the belief that your truth doesn't matter. And every time you let things slide, she watches. She's not looking for a fighter. She's looking for a man who won't fold. A man who doesn't fear disagreement because his values are stronger than the room he's in. Real confidence means telling the truth even when it shakes your voice. It means being willing to walk away when something violates your peace. It means understanding that conflict is not chaos, it's clarity. It's how real people connect. You cannot lead your life while walking on eggshells. You cannot be respected while avoiding all risk. Strength is calm under pressure, not silence, not submission. Calm. And calm only comes when you trust your own spine. If you've been afraid to speak up, it doesn't mean you're broken. It means you've been surviving. But surviving is not living. And survival doesn't attract respect. It attracts resentment. You start to hate yourself for all the things you didn't say. And she starts to feel like she's with a man who disappears when it matters most. You don't need to become aggressive. You just need to stop apologizing for having a boundary. You just need to stop pretending that being liked is more important than being true. The moment you stop fearing conflict, everything changes. You become magnetic, not because you force your will, but because your energy says, I will not betray myself. That is power. That is rare. And that is what she notices, even if she never says it out loud. You don't have to prove you're strong. You just have to stop hiding. And when you do, you'll realize the respect you've been chasing starts with you. When you can hold your ground without guilt, you stop living in fear. You stop seeking permission. And that's when the world and the right woman start seeing you differently. Every time you look outside yourself for approval, you give your power away. You start living in reaction, not intention. You wonder what she's thinking, what she's feeling, how she's interpreting your every word. You walk on mental eggshells, hoping she'll validate you, your worth, your decisions, your presence. But the moment your confidence depends on someone else's response, it stops being confidence. It becomes need. And nothing drains attraction faster than a man who needs to be told he matters. Because deep down, she's not looking for someone to entertain her ego. She's looking for someone who's already whole. When you chase validation, you become a mirror, not a man. Reflecting back what you think people want to see, smiling when you don't feel like it, laughing at things that aren't funny, agreeing with opinions that don't align with your soul. And the more you do it, the more you disconnect from who you truly are. You become a character, polished, likable, agreeable, but empty. Women see through this. They might not say it, but they feel it. They sense when a man is trying to impress instead of express. And they walk away, not because you're not enough, but because you're not being you. Validation is a drug. It gives you a hit of dopamine, a sense of safety. But that high fades quickly, and the crash leaves you chasing more approval, more attention, more likes, more praise. But no amount will ever fill the hole left by not trusting yourself. The only validation that matters is the one that comes from within. That quiet, knowing that you are aligned, real, and standing in your truth regardless of who notices. You don't need to be louder. You need to be clearer. Clear on your values, clear on your vision, clear on who you are without applause. That kind of clarity doesn't seek validation. It attracts it naturally. Because people are drawn to those who don't flinch under pressure, who don't shift their identity to win acceptance. That kind of man doesn't need to ask, do you like me? Because he already knows he respects himself. And that's enough. Stop asking others to confirm your worth. Decide it. Live it. Prove it to yourself in silence, through action, through discipline. Let your self-respect speak louder than your words. Because when you no longer need validation, you walk differently. You speak with weight. You move through life with a quiet confidence that doesn't beg for approval. And that's what she notices. That's what she remembers. Not the man who tried to win her, but the man who didn't need to. This is your call to stop seeking and start becoming. Drop the mask, let go of the performance, and choose presence over permission. Because the moment you stop needing validation is the moment you become magnetic. Not by force, but by truth. And nothing is more powerful than a man who knows he's enough, with or without being told. There is nothing more damaging to your confidence than apologizing for who you are, not for mistakes that take strength, but for your dreams, your standards, your personality, your truth. Every time you shrink to make someone else comfortable, you tell yourself you're too much, too intense, too focused, too different. And eventually, you start believing it. You stop speaking with conviction. You question your instincts. You censor your own voice before anyone else has the chance to. That's not humility. That's self-abandonment. And the more you do it, the harder it becomes to recognize the man you were meant to be. When you water yourself down, you don't become more likable. You become forgettable. Because no one is inspired by a man who doubts his own presence. Women feel it when you're not rooted, when you filter your opinions, when you downplay your strengths to avoid judgment. They sense the hesitation in your words, the lack of certainty in your body language. And instead of feeling safe with you, they feel unsettled. Because if you're unsure about yourself, how can she be sure about you? You were not put here to fit into every room. You were built to stand firm in the right ones. When you say sorry for taking up space, you teach others that you don't belong in it. But strength isn't about overpowering. It's about owning. Owning your values, your identity, your energy. The man who doesn't apologize for being real carries a different kind of power. He doesn't force it. He lives it. And that kind of presence can't be faked. Stop editing yourself to be accepted. The right people don't need you to play small. And the wrong ones will never respect you for it. You were not designed to live under the weight of other people's expectations. You were meant to speak truth even if your voice shakes. You were meant to live boldly even when it makes others uncomfortable. Because true confidence is not about being perfect. It's about being unapologetically authentic. Every time you try to fit into someone else's version of who you should be, you lose another piece of your power. Until all that's left is a shell, a man who smiles on the outside but feels invisible inside. That's not who you are. That's who you became to survive. But survival is not your destiny. Strength is, wholeness is, integrity is. And it begins when you stop saying sorry for being real. You don't need permission to take up space. You need permission from yourself to stop hiding. Speak your truth. Live your values. Own your presence. Because when you stop apologizing for who you are, the world begins to respond differently. People feel it. She feels it. And most importantly, you feel it. That's the shift. That's the spark. And once it lights, nothing can dim it unless you let it. When you can't say no, you're not being generous, you're being controlled. You think you're being kind. You think you're avoiding drama. But what you're really doing is betraying yourself again and again. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't feel right, you're teaching your nervous system that your needs don't matter, that your peace is disposable, that your time belongs to everyone but you. And women feel this. They feel it in how quickly you fold, in how little you ask for, in how much you tolerate. And it doesn't come off as strength, it comes off as fear. A man who can't say no is a man who's forgotten his power. He's forgotten that boundaries are not walls, they're doors. They don't close people out, they let the right ones in. But when you let everyone walk through you, you become a hallway, not a home. No woman wants to build with someone who doesn't protect his own space, because if you won't defend your values, you won't defend her. If you won't stand up for your time, your goals, your energy, then what are you really leading? You were not born to be agreeable. You were born to be aligned. And sometimes that means saying no, not because you're selfish, but because you're committed, because your time is sacred, because your vision is clear. And when you say no with clarity, you don't push people away, you show them who you are. That kind of strength doesn't need explanation. It speaks for itself. And it makes people pause. It makes people respect you. It makes women feel safe because they see a man who's not swayed by guilt, pressure, or the need to please. The fear of saying no is rooted in the fear of being rejected. But the truth is, the people who disappear when you set boundaries were never for you. They were just using you. Real connection doesn't come from always agreeing. It comes from mutual respect. And that starts when you respect yourself enough to say, this isn't for me. When you say no, not with anger, but with certainty, you become something rare, something solid, something that can't be manipulated because you're anchored in who you are. Stop being available for everything. Start being intentional with your yes. Let your no carry weight. Every boundary you set isn't pushing people away. It's pulling your identity together. It's reminding your mind, your heart, your spirit that you are not here to be everything to everyone. You are here to become the man who protects what matters, who honors his own energy, who doesn't need permission to walk away from what doesn't serve his growth. When you say no to what drains you, you say yes to the life you're meant to live. You say yes to clarity, to strength, to leadership. And that shift, however uncomfortable, is what separates the boys from the men. Say no, own it, and watch how everything around you begins to change. Pressure doesn't reveal weakness. It reveals preparation. Life will test you when it's least convenient. You'll face moments that demand more than calm words and careful plans. You'll be stretched, cornered, and shaken. And in those moments, your mask falls. Who you really are beneath the surface comes to light. Not the version you show when things are easy, but the version that rises or collapses when everything feels like it's falling apart. Women feel that difference. They see it in how you handle uncertainty. They hear it in your tone when plans break, when things go wrong, when you're pushed beyond your comfort zone. And if you crumble, it sends a message louder than any words ever could. Strength is not about being unaffected. It's about being unshakable. The man who stays grounded under pressure doesn't need to be loud. He doesn't need to prove he's in control. He is control, not because he avoids emotion, but because he's mastered it. He feels the fear, he feels the heat, but he doesn't fold. He doesn't explode. He leads himself through the fire. That's what she looks for, not perfection, not bravado, but composure, the kind of calm that makes her feel safe even when everything outside is chaos. You can't fake that. You can't pretend to be solid if you've never built anything inside yourself. The man who collapses under pressure is the one who avoids the hard work when no one's watching. The one who skips discipline, who hides behind excuses, who avoids discomfort until life forces it on him. And when it comes, he panics, he blames, he shuts down, not because he's weak by nature, but because he never trained to be strong. If pressure breaks you, it's not the pressure, it's the foundation. You don't need to fear those moments, you need to prepare for them. You need to build yourself so strong inside that when life shakes you, you respond instead of react. You lead instead of retreat. That strength is not built in crisis. It's built in discipline, in consistency, in facing the small daily challenges head on instead of avoiding them. It's built every time you choose effort over comfort, every time you show up, even when you don't feel like it. A woman will never tell you outright, but she watches how you respond under stress. She sees whether you collapse or command, whether you spiral or stay present, and she feels it in her body, whether she's beside a man who will rise or a man who will run. That's not pressure. It's reality. It's nature. It's the language of trust. Build yourself into someone who doesn't fear the storm because he is the storm, someone who doesn't run from pressure but sharpens himself with it. Because when you stop collapsing and start commanding, everything changes. She sees it, you feel it, and life begins to treat you not as a victim, but as a leader. Strength is measured in silence, not in what you say, but in what you do. A man who talks big but acts small isn't inspiring, he's exhausting. He makes promises but delivers excuses. He sets goals but never follows through. He speaks of discipline but lives in comfort. And women notice this quickly, not through judgment, but through instinct, because inconsistency feels unsafe. Words that aren't backed by action leave a trail of disappointment. No matter how charming your voice sounds, if your life doesn't match your message, trust disappears. And once trust fades, respect is gone with it. Every time you speak about what you're going to do without doing it, you erode your self-respect. You feel it in your gut. That quiet shame, that internal frustration. You know you could have done more, should have followed through, but you didn't. And so, you talk louder, hoping it'll cover the gap between who you say you are and who you've become. But words are hollow when they don't echo in your habits. Women don't need perfect men, they need honest ones. Men who don't inflate their image just to feel significant. Men who can quietly grind without needing praise. Men who say little, but when they speak, it means something. When you act without needing recognition, you move differently. You no longer seek approval, you generate it. You no longer try to impress, you express truth. You show up, even when no one's clapping. That's where real masculinity lives, not in the noise, but in the results. Not in the talk, but in the tension you choose to walk through. If your actions and words are not aligned, people won't call you out. Life will. Women won't argue with you. They'll just stop trusting you because they're not listening to your words. They're watching your consistency. And so is your own mind. Every time you follow through on what you say you'll do, you build internal power, quiet confidence, a steady sense of identity. You stop needing to convince anyone of who you are because your life speaks for itself. And when you move like that, she feels it. She doesn't just hear what you say, she sees it in how you live. That's what creates attraction that lasts. That's what creates connection that runs deeper than surface charm. That's what builds the kind of bond where respect and desire grow stronger, not weaker, over time. You don't need to talk louder, you need to act deeper. Cut the noise. Cancel the empty promises. Get back to basics. Do what you say you'll do, even when it's inconvenient, even when no one's watching. Especially then. Because when your habits match your words, you become magnetic, grounded, real. That's how you shift from being a man who hopes things will change to a man who causes change. That's how you become undeniable. And that's the kind of man she can believe in. Not because he told her to, but because he gave her no reason to doubt. Fear doesn't go away by hiding from it. It grows. It spreads. It takes root in everything you do. And when fear starts making your decisions for you, your life begins to shrink. You hesitate. You overthink. You avoid risk, confrontation, effort, because you're scared to fail, scared to look weak, scared to feel pain. But in trying to avoid weakness, you become it. You trade your potential for comfort. You let opportunities pass. You talk yourself out of taking action because fear whispers, "What if you're not ready?" And you believe it. Not because it's true, but because it's easy. And over time, you become a man who moves not with purpose, but with permission from his fear. That's what women see, not your anxiety, but your avoidance, not your doubts, but your inaction. They feel the hesitation in your voice, the tension in your energy, the gap between what you want and what you do. And it doesn't feel like safety. It feels like uncertainty. It feels like she'll always have to lead, to initiate, to pull you forward because you won't move unless it's comfortable. That's not attraction. That's pressure. That's not partnership. That's imbalance. You cannot lead a relationship if you're being led by fear. Fear is not the enemy. It's a signal. It's pointing toward the exact place you need to grow, but most men run from it. They bury it beneath distractions, comfort, entertainment, false confidence. They pretend they're fine while quietly dying inside, knowing they're capable of more, but too afraid to step into it. And every time you back down, you lose a little trust in yourself. Your self-image cracks. Not because of what others think, but because deep down you know you're not living in alignment with your potential. The way forward isn't in avoiding fear, it's in leaning into it, facing it head on, choosing action even when your hands shake. That's where transformation lives. Not in waiting for confidence, but in doing the thing that scares you while you're still afraid. That's what builds strength. That's what builds trust in yourself, in your mission, in your energy. And that's what she feels. She doesn't need you to be fearless. She needs to know you won't collapse in the presence of fear, that you'll rise even when it's hard, that you'll step forward even when the outcome isn't guaranteed. You don't need more time. You don't need to be more ready. You need to act now, not because fear disappears, but because you refuse to let it dictate who you become. You were not made to hide. You were not built to freeze. You were born to move, to rise, to become the man who looks fear in the face and says, "Not today." And when you do, everything shifts. Your posture, your energy, your presence. She'll feel it. The world will feel it. But most of all, you will. That's the power waiting on the other side of fear. And it starts the moment you stop waiting. Every pattern of weakness has a root. It didn't start with her. It didn't start with rejection. It didn't even start in adulthood. It started long before that. In quiet moments when you learned that your needs weren't safe, your voice didn't matter, or your presence was too much. You weren't born unsure of yourself. You were taught to doubt, taught to stay small, taught that silence was safer than expression, that approval was earned through sacrifice, that love was conditional. And without realizing it, you began to shape yourself around those beliefs, not to grow, but to survive. You became agreeable to avoid conflict. You sought validation to feel worthy. You apologized for your existence because that's what kept the peace. You stopped saying no because no meant punishment or rejection. You started performing, hoping that if you acted right, you'd finally be enough. These weren't conscious choices. They were survival instincts. And they worked. They kept you accepted, unnoticed, safe. But now they're suffocating you. They've become a cage you carry everywhere, quiet, invisible, but heavy. What you thought was personality is often just protection. The overthinking, the hesitation, the fear of being judged, they're not flaws, they're shields. You built them to avoid pain. But now they're blocking connection. Women can sense when you're guarded, when you're trying too hard, when your presence is filtered through fear, and they don't pull away because they dislike you. They pull away because they can't feel you. And if they can't feel you, they can't trust you. Healing starts with truth, not judgment, not shame, just truth. The truth that your patterns were learned, the truth that they served a purpose, and the deeper truth that they no longer serve the man you're becoming. You are not broken. You are conditioned. But conditioning can be rewired. What was once instinct can be unlearned. What once kept you small can become the fire that builds your strength, but only if you're willing to face it, to look inward instead of blaming outward, to confront the parts of you that hurt, not with guilt, but with courage. You don't need to hate who you've been to transform who you are. You just need to stop pretending that you don't see it. Stop pretending that these patterns are normal. They're not. They're familiar, but they're not your identity. You are not weakness. You are not fear. You are not avoidance. You are the man waking up to all of it. And that alone makes you powerful. This is your chance to stop surviving and start building, to stop defaulting to the boy who played small and become the man who rises tall. Awareness is the beginning. Ownership is the breakthrough. And everything you've been waiting for, the strength, the clarity, the respect, It begins when you stop running from yourself and start stepping into who you were always meant to be. Fully, freely, finally. Women don't need time to sense weakness. They feel it instantly. Not because they're judging you, but because their nervous system is wired to detect safety. Strength is not just about muscles or words. It's about energy. The energy you carry when you walk into a room, the way you hold eye contact, the way you speak without rushing, the way you respond instead of react. A woman doesn't have to analyze you. She feels you. She feels whether you're rooted or restless, whether you're leading from presence or hiding behind performance. You may say all the right things, but if your energy says you're unsure, disconnected, or desperate, she knows. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being solid. A man who's solid in himself calms the environment around him. His strength is quiet, not because it lacks force, but because it doesn't need to prove anything. He knows who he is. He knows what he wants. And he's not swayed by approval or rejection. That's the kind of man who makes a woman feel safe, not just physically, but emotionally. Not because he controls the world around him, but because he governs the world within him. When your nervous system is regulated, your presence becomes magnetic. When your thoughts are calm, your energy becomes powerful. Weakness, on the other hand, leaks. It shows up in your fidgeting, your over-explaining, your inability to hold silence. It shows up in your overcompensating, your need to dominate conversations, your fear of being misunderstood. And even if you cover it with charm or humor, she still feels the instability. She feels like she has to carry the emotional weight. And that's when attraction fades. Not because you're a bad person, but because your energy doesn't lead. It follows. It chases. It clings. And no woman wants to mother a man who cannot anchor himself. True masculine energy doesn't rush to fill silence. It doesn't react out of fear. It stands still in discomfort and owns it. That kind of energy is rare. And that's why it's so attractive, because it creates a sense of trust. A woman wants to feel that when the world gets loud, the man beside her stays steady. She wants to feel that your strength isn't situational, it's internal. That even if things go wrong, you won't collapse. You won't lash out. You won't disappear. You'll stay fully present, fully responsible, fully grounded. That level of presence doesn't come from pretending. It comes from practice, from self-awareness, from learning to master your own state, instead of being a victim to it. Because when you lead yourself, everything shifts. You no longer chase connection. You create it. You no longer need to impress. You express truth. You no longer fear being seen. You welcome it. And when you show up like that, she doesn't just notice. She feels safe. She feels drawn, not to a role you're playing, but to the real man you've become. Weakness doesn't just cost you attraction, it costs you your future. Every day you delay the work. Every day you ignore the signs. Every day you choose comfort over courage. You lose time, time you'll never get back. You settle for less. You tolerate relationships that drain you. You entertain habits that keep you numb. You accept mediocrity as normal because change feels too uncomfortable. But deep down, something in you knows the truth. You weren't made for this version of life. You weren't built to stay stuck in cycles of doubt, avoidance, and regret. You feel the gap between who you are and who you could be. And that gap hurts. It doesn't matter how good you are at hiding it. You feel it when you're alone. You feel it when you wake up without purpose. You feel it in conversations that lack depth, in routines that feel lifeless, in choices that leave you empty. That silent frustration, that sense that you're meant for more is not a flaw. It's a signal, a call to rise. But you can't answer that call by waiting. You can't reach your next level by doing the same things that are keeping you small. You have to move now. Not when it's easy. Not when you feel more motivated. Now. Because every excuse, every delay, every rationalization is costing you momentum. And without momentum, nothing changes. Your life doesn't change when you want it to. It changes when you refuse to keep living like this. When you finally decide that playing small is no longer an option. That tolerating weakness isn't humility. It's sabotage. You are not here to repeat patterns. You are here to rewrite them. But the clock is ticking. Your future doesn't wait. The opportunities meant for you are moving forward with or without you. And if you don't rise to meet them, you'll spend your life watching others live the life you were capable of building. Pain doesn't come from trying and failing. It comes from knowing you didn't try at all. The regret of inaction is heavier than any failure you'll ever face. Because failure teaches, it sharpens you. But action erodes you. Slowly, quietly, until one day you wake up wondering how you got here, and worse, how many years you've already wasted. Don't let that be your story. Don't let fear write your future. You have one life, one shot to become the man you were meant to be. Not the version people expect, not the version that blends in, the real version, the one that leads, the one that protects, the one that commands respect because he respects himself. That version is not found someday. He's created now, through the decisions you make, the actions you take, the standards you enforce. This is your moment to stop drifting and start building. Because if you don't act, nothing will change. And if nothing changes, neither will you. Choose your future. Choose your strength. Choose to become undeniable. It starts with the decision to stop waiting. The moment you decide to stop waiting is the moment your identity begins to shift. No more playing the role of the passive man. No more hiding behind uncertainty or blaming circumstances. Because the truth is, you were never lacking potential. You were lacking permission, not from others, but from yourself. You were waiting for some invisible signal, some perfect conditions, some external push to finally move. But strength doesn't wait. Leadership doesn't wait. The life you want doesn't wait. It begins the second you say enough. Enough settling. Enough overthinking. Enough making weakness your comfort zone. Growth demands confrontation. Not with others, but with yourself. The part of you that flinches under pressure, the part of you that craves approval more than truth, the part of you that avoids boundaries because it fears rejection. These aren't just habits, they're mirrors. They show you where you've abandoned your power. Every time you silence your voice to keep the peace, you betray your potential. Every time you let others decide your worth, you shrink. And the world doesn't adjust for men who shrink. It ignores them, it steps over them, it forgets them. You were not made to be forgotten. You were built to be remembered, not because you were loud or aggressive, but because your presence spoke louder than your words. But presence isn't something you're born with. It's something you cultivate through discipline, through truth, through action. You cannot command respect until you first demand it from yourself. That means keeping your promises, speaking your boundaries, walking away from what insults your soul. It means standing tall even when your voice shakes. Because real confidence isn't the absence of fear, it's the refusal to let fear decide. Every time you choose integrity over comfort, you grow. Every time you say no when you used to say yes just to be liked, you rise. Every time you act from principle instead of pressure, you build something permanent inside of you. That's how real power is formed, not in a moment, but in the small, repeated choices that forge a man worth following. That's the kind of man women feel. That's the kind of man the world remembers, not because he chased validation, but because he became undeniable. This path isn't easy. It will test you. It will stretch you. But it will also reward you in ways that comfort never could. You will feel pride, not for who you pretended to be, but for who you finally chose to become. And that pride will radiate from you, in your eyes, in your voice, in your energy. No one will have to guess what you stand for. They'll know. Not because you said it, but because you live it. This is the call. Not to change who you are, but to become who you were always meant to be. Stop waiting. Stop hiding. Stop hoping it changes on its own. Stand up. Step forward. Build the strength. Lead the life. Be the man. Now. Real strength begins with ownership. Every flaw you've avoided, every excuse you've repeated, every pattern you've let run your life, it all changes the moment you take full responsibility. Not partial, not conditional, but complete ownership of who you are and who you're becoming. That's the line that separates boys from men. Boys point fingers, men look in the mirror, and when you finally stop blaming your past, your parents, your circumstances, you unlock something unstoppable, your ability to choose your future. That choice is your greatest power, and no one can take it unless you hand it over. It's time to stop outsourcing your confidence to other people's reactions. It's time to stop needing proof of your worth before believing it. You don't need permission to be powerful. You need presence. You need discipline. You need a mind that doesn't fold under pressure. Because the world will test you. People will challenge you. Life will throw you curveballs. But if you've trained your inner world to stand tall, nothing out there can break you. That's what women respond to. Not perfection, not arrogance, but the quiet certainty of a man who knows who he is and doesn't need validation to prove it. Weakness is not just physical, it's emotional avoidance, it's spiritual laziness, it's intellectual surrender. And if you've been shrinking to make others comfortable, playing small to avoid confrontation, or silencing your truth just to be liked, then understand this, you are the only one who can fix it. Waiting for someone else to see your worth is a trap. Build it within. Build it through action, through self-respect, through ruthless honesty. If something inside you feels off, it probably is. Don't numb it. Face it. That discomfort is a signal, not a sentence. It's your call to rise. When a man leads himself, others feel it. His boundaries are unshakable. His energy commands attention without needing to speak. His decisions are firm, not because he's rigid, but because he's rooted in clarity. That's the kind of energy that shifts rooms. That's the kind of presence that creates impact, not because he's trying to impress, but because he's aligned. And alignment isn't a gift, it's a daily decision. You either choose the habits that build you, or you fall into the ones that break you. There is no in-between. Stop waiting to feel ready. Strength doesn't show up before the action. It's built through it. Confidence doesn't fall into your lap. It grows when you do the hard things, especially when no one's watching. That's how you earn your own respect. That's how you shift from needing approval to radiating certainty. That's how weakness turns into strength, not overnight, but through relentless, daily, unapologetic commitment to growth. You don't need to be perfect. You need to be real. You need to be honest. You need to be relentless in your pursuit of the man you were always meant to become. And the time to begin that pursuit is not tomorrow. It's right now. Weak men wait for life to be fair. Strong men face life as it is and decide to rise anyway. If you've been waiting for the perfect time, the perfect situation, the perfect version of yourself to show up, understand this, that time doesn't exist. Life rewards the bold, not the passive. It honors the man who steps into discomfort, not the one who hides from it. If you feel like you're behind, it's not because you lack potential. It's because you've been avoiding the moments that demand you to level up. And the cost of avoidance is always your greatness. You weren't born to be passive. You weren't born to blend in. Deep down, you feel it, that tension, that restlessness. It's your soul telling you you're made for more. Not more comfort, but more purpose. Not more distractions, but more direction. But that kind of life doesn't happen by accident. It's built, not found. Built through choices most won't make. Choices that require you to let go of the version of yourself that kept you safe, but never made you proud. Growth isn't pain-free, but neither is staying weak. One builds you. The other destroys you slowly. You need to understand something that most never will. The reason you feel stuck isn't because life is against you. It's because you've allowed habits that rob your strength to run your life. Hesitation, self-doubt, comfort-seeking, approval-chasing. These are not minor issues. They are silent killers of your potential. Every time you choose them, you reinforce the identity of someone who settles. But every time you reject them, no matter how small the moment, you reclaim a piece of your power. And power, once reclaimed, multiplies. Real transformation is not dramatic, it's not loud, it's consistent, it's the decision to hold yourself to a higher standard even when no one else is watching. It's choosing discipline over impulse, focus over distraction, truth over excuses. That's how you become the man no one can ignore, not by chasing attention, but by embodying strength. And strength is felt in your energy, in your eyes, in the way you walk, speak, think, and act. A woman doesn't need to hear your worth. She needs to feel it. And she can't feel it if you haven't owned it yet. Stop looking outside for answers. You already know what needs to be done. You already feel the pull toward more. The question isn't what to do. The question is, will you finally do it? Will you show up for yourself when it's hard? Will you break the patterns that keep you small? Will you stop acting like life owes you something and start becoming the man who earns everything he wants through relentless self-respect? This isn't about being liked. It's about being powerful. It's about walking through the world with conviction, with direction, with presence, because that's what strength looks like. That's what leadership feels like. And that's what real men build, day by day, choice by choice, without apology. Strength is not found in words. It's carved through actions repeated when no one claps, when no one notices, when every part of you wants to quit, but you keep showing up anyway. That's when you build the identity of a man who can't be shaken. And until you reach that level, your power stays hidden behind comfort. Most people live their whole lives avoiding discomfort, yet wonder why they feel powerless. They never train the muscle that matters most, resilience. They protect their pride, their ego, their image, while letting their potential waste away. But you are not most people. You're here because something inside you is done with weakness. Weakness is not just failure, it's fear wearing a mask. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of effort without recognition, but those fears are lies. They're mental illusions built on the idea that playing small keeps you safe. But safety isn't the goal. Growth is. If you chase safety, you'll get regret. If you chase growth, you'll get freedom. The freedom to speak your mind without shaking. The freedom to set a boundary without guilt. The freedom to move through the world with your head high, not because you're better than anyone, but because you finally respect yourself. You don't need to become someone else to earn that freedom. You need to become who you were before the world told you to shrink, before life taught you to doubt yourself, before failure convinced you to settle. Your real power isn't buried deep. It's right beneath the layers of excuses you've been carrying. Peel them off. Let go of the blame. Drop the story that says this is just how I am. You're not fixed. You're not stuck. You're not broken. You're becoming. And that process demands that you burn the false identities you've used to protect your comfort. Everything you want, respect, love, purpose, power, sits on the other side of discomfort. And discomfort will meet you the moment you decide to lead your life instead of reacting to it. That leadership starts with how you talk to yourself. If your inner voice is weak, you'll live a weak life. But if your inner voice is trained, challenged, disciplined, and sharpened, it will carry you through storms. The world can't give you that. Women can't give you that. Only you can. And it starts the moment you decide you're done living beneath your potential. The man you admire, the life you want, the strength you crave, it's all waiting for you to stop negotiating with weakness. Not to hate it, but to outgrow it, to starve it, to walk away from it one decision at a time. Because every time you do, you get closer to a version of yourself that doesn't beg for approval, doesn't fold under pressure, and doesn't need to prove his worth, because he lives it every single day. That's who you're becoming. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Just decide. Then act like your future depends on it. Because it does. You can't keep living your life trying to be liked. Approval is a trap. It's the silent killer of potential. When you let other people's opinions define your choices, you give them power over your life. You shrink. You hesitate. You second-guess yourself into paralysis. And every time you silence your truth just to fit in, you lose a part of yourself. That's not strength. That's fear dressed as politeness. That's weakness pretending to be agreeable. And women see it. They feel it. It's in your tone, your eyes, your hesitation. The energy of a man who doesn't fully believe in himself can never be hidden. You think people will like you more if you play small. But the truth is, people only respect those who respect themselves. And respect isn't given to those who chase it. It's earned by those who stand firm in who they are. That means being willing to be misunderstood. Being willing to speak up when it's uncomfortable. Being willing to walk away when you're disrespected. Weakness is silence when strength is needed. Weakness is smiling when your boundaries are crossed. Weakness is choosing peace with others while waging war inside yourself. That's not peace. That's self-betrayal. Real power begins when you stop apologizing for existing. You're not here to be passive. You're not here to be a placeholder. You're here to lead, to build, to protect, to challenge, to grow. But none of that happens until you stop living for applause and start living for purpose. If your confidence depends on how others react, you'll never be free. Because one negative comment can crush you. One moment of rejection can derail you. But if your confidence comes from living in alignment with your values, you become untouchable. You don't need to be loud to be strong. You don't need to prove anything. You just need to be solid. Solid in who you are, in what you believe, in what you stand for. A man who is solid doesn't need attention. He commands respect by how he moves, not how he talks. And if someone doesn't like that, it doesn't shake him. Because he knows he's not for everyone. He's not bending to fit anyone's mold. He's building his own. Quiet confidence beats loud insecurity every time. And women know the difference. Let go of the need to be liked. Let go of the fear of offending. Let go of the addiction to external praise. Because every time you compromise your truth to gain someone else's favor, you pay for it with your peace. And peace is priceless. Choose courage over comfort. Choose truth over validation. Choose growth over fitting in. You'll lose people. You'll face judgment. But you'll gain something far greater, your own self-respect. And once you have that, everything changes. Because the world treats you the way you treat yourself. And when you treat yourself like a man of value, others have no choice but to follow. That's how you rise. That's how you lead. That's how you win. Stop asking for permission to be who you are. Stop waiting for someone to tell you you're enough. Because if you keep looking outward for validation, you'll never find peace inside. Strength is not about what others see, it's about what you believe. And if you don't believe you're worthy, no one else will. It doesn't matter how much potential you have. It doesn't matter how nice you are, how talented, how willing. If you don't stand behind your words, your values, your decisions, people will sense it. They will feel the hesitation in your presence. And hesitation is weakness. Not because you're unsure, but because you're allowing fear to lead when confidence should. Confidence isn't arrogance. It's clarity. It's knowing what you want without apology. It's walking into a room and not needing to prove anything, because you already know your worth. And that kind of confidence is magnetic. It shifts how people treat you. It silences disrespect without a word. But you can't fake it. You build it. And you build it by showing up for yourself every single day. Every time you say what you mean, even when your voice shakes. Every time you do what you said you'd do, even when no one is watching. Every time you face what scares you instead of running from it. That's where real power begins. Weakness isn't about lacking strength. It's about lacking direction, lacking standards, lacking a foundation. When a man doesn't know what he stands for, he falls for everything. He chases attention. He mirrors others. He pleases, performs, and pretends. But underneath the mask is emptiness. And that emptiness leaks out in the way he speaks, the way he carries himself, the way he tries to be everything but himself. Women don't respect that. They might use it, they might tolerate it, but they will not respect it. Because no one respects a man who doesn't respect himself. You must draw the line, not to hurt others, but to protect your peace. Not to intimidate, but to declare who you are. And once you do, you'll feel a shift. The fear will still be there, but so will the fire. You'll stop walking on eggshells and start walking in truth. You'll stop asking, is this okay? And start saying, this is who I am. That shift, that inner anchoring, that's strength. That's what changes how people see you. It's not about being the loudest. It's about being the most rooted. Rooted in conviction, rooted in vision, rooted in a self-respect that can't be negotiated. Because when you have that, you stop tolerating what drains you. You stop chasing what distracts you. You stop shrinking to make others feel comfortable. And you start building a life that reflects your worth, one decision at a time. That is where weakness ends and transformation begins. You're not here to play small. You're here to rise. Now rise like you mean it.